In the 1950s, America was a country divided, not just by geography, but by race. In many parts of the United States, especially the South, black and white people were separated. They went to different schools, used different bathrooms, even drank from different water fountains. This was called segregation, and it was enforced by laws known as Jim Crow. But something was about to change. On December 1, 1955, in Montgomery, Alabama, a woman named Rosa Parks made a simple but powerful decision. When a bus driver told her to give up her seat to a white passenger, she refused. This small act of defiance would ignite a movement. In response to Rosa Parks' arrest, black leaders in Montgomery organized a boycott of the city's buses. Leading the charge was a young pastor named Martin Luther King Jr. For 381 days, black citizens refused to ride the buses, walking miles to work and school instead. The message was clear: they were tired of being treated as second-class citizens. The bus boycott worked. In 1956, the Supreme Court ruled that segregation on buses was illegal. But the fight for civil rights was far from over. Across the South, black Americans were still denied their basic rights. They couldn't vote, attend good schools, or eat at certain restaurants. This injustice fueled a nationwide movement for equality. Throughout the 1960s, peaceful protests and marches spread across the country. Civil rights leaders like King, Malcolm X, and others organized sit-ins, freedom rides, and massive demonstrations. Their goal was simple: equality under the law. But the road to change was not easy. Many protesters faced brutal resistance. Police used tear gas, dogs, and fire hoses to break up peaceful demonstrations. People were beaten, arrested, and even killed. But the movement's leaders remained committed to nonviolence, believing that peaceful protest would win the day. In 1963, over 250,000 people gathered in Washington, D.C., for the famous March on Washington. It was here that Martin Luther King Jr. gave his iconic "I Have a Dream" speech. He spoke of a future where all people, regardless of their skin color, could live together in equality and harmony. His words inspired millions, both in the US and around the world. Just 1 year later, in 1964, the hard work of the civil rights activists paid off. President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act, a landmark law that outlawed discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. It was a huge victory, but the fight wasn't over yet. Next came the battle for voting rights. In places like Selma, Alabama, black Americans were still being denied the right to vote. Once again, civil rights activists took to the streets, marching for justice. After months of struggle, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was passed, ensuring that every citizen, regardless of race, had the right to vote. The civil rights movement didn't just change laws, it changed hearts and minds. While the fight for equality isn't over, the movement paved the way for future generations to stand up for justice. Thanks to the courage of people like Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr., and thousands of others, America took a major step toward becoming a land of freedom and equality for all. And that's the story of the American civil rights movement, ordinary people who stood up for their rights and changed the world.